proudest day, and the proudest time, and the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett. That's all was said. I can still picture that run. That was just the best run ever.
Welcome along to Krunching Gears, the Rally Podcast. Season 4, Episode 1. Connor, we're back after the new year, and before we start, I suppose we should really wish everybody a very happy new year, and thanks for all your support in 2024. So, let's roll, and what better way to start, I suppose, than, a couple of months ago, we were in Donagh to celebrate the British Formula 2 weekend, and what a weekend it was. We met some of our heroes, we heard some fantastic stories, and that man, once again, Donagh Kelly, was in the centre of it all, Connor.
Absolutely. Listen, Donagh had this project in mind, and I suppose there's a love affair there between Donagh and the F2 BRC era, and he managed to pull something together that's never been done, and as has been said since, will probably never be done again. And it was just a magical experience and such a fabulous weekend.
It really was. Whenever we were, young fellas growing up, like we were in our late teens, early 20s at the time, these Formula 2 cars were king of the hill.
When you look back now, it really was a golden era. Maybe in the middle of it, I don't know if we fully appreciated that at the time, but to have 6 cracking rounds of the BRC combined with 7 manufacturer proper works cars and a whole bunch of really competitive guys from Tapio Loikkanen, Higgins, Alister, McRae, Gwendolyn Evans. It really was, I suppose, a perfect storm of rallying at the time.
It really was. We had so many works drivers, fantastic events. These cars, you go up now to the museum and see these cars, they still take your breath away. Yeah, there was just, as you say, it was just the perfect storm. And I think as well as that, and such a glut of British talent at that time. You had your Mark Higgins, Donagh Evans, all these Martin Rowe. The names just, and there's so many names that are still so fresh in your mind as if it was only 5 minutes ago.
Absolutely, and not just British talent too. The great thing about it was attracting the Finns and the Germans with Baumschlager, with Tony Gardemeister. We saw Kyle Lindstrom competing, and as mentioned earlier, with Tapio Loikkanen as well. So there was some fantastic talent there from around the world competing in the BRC at the time.
That's for sure, yeah. And to get so many of those guys to come back together again for one weekend up in Frosses. Yeah, we know that what Donagh can do when he puts his mind to things. But I don't know. I just remember that Friday night looking around. Every time you looked around, there was somebody else coming walking in. You go, oh my God, it's such and such. Oh my God, and it was like you were pinching yourself. Like, was this real?
Exactly. You didn't know where to look. Every time you turned, as you say, you recognized another face, a little bit older from when we remembered them, but you could still, whether it was Phil Mills or, Hard Davies or, no matter where, Kyle Lindstrom, or no matter where you looked, there was somebody there and you go, and it was just unbelievable. It really was. It was breathtaking, and it was stuff of, rallying dreams.
Yeah. And just even then to see the way they interacted with each other as well. Some of these guys hadn't seen each other, since probably, 25 years ago. And they just slot it back in again as if it was yesterday. It was just just the respect, the natural flow, I don't know how you would put it, but just the respect they had for each other.
Look, we've talked about it before, in the current level of World Rally competition, Irish Tarmac competition, etc. Where, what we love hearing are the stories about the banter between the crews competing against each other, no matter how competitive it gets. And, when we look back at that BRC F2 area, it was competitive. Like, it genuinely was, you didn't know who was going to win the rallies. And, it could have been any one of 4 or 5 drivers on some of the events could have won the rally. And even, we got down to where a championship could have been decided between 5 people on the last event. but the respect they had, the banter, it was proper friendship. You could see it being reignited for those that hadn't been in touch as much. There's smiles on the face when they recognized and saw each other, and you felt that warmth in the room.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And like, what a weekend, with a quiz on the Friday night, and then a dinner and barbecue, and then the Saturday we're down in the museum, and then Saturday night it was like a dinner, and then the stories started to flow, and those stories, like, thankfully they'll probably never be broadcast, because but the crack, but like those stories just ignited something in us. We thought we need to do something about this here too, don't we?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we can't retell this story.
No.
But it really was. I suppose it's what reinforced what that weekend was about, and it wasn't just to come along and admire some really nice cars and talk to some really competitive crews. It was about the whole era, the friendships, the crack, the banter, the goings-ons, the competition, what was happening behind the scenes, how the guys were moving between different, works drives and everything. And it was just an opportunity to I suppose, dig a little deeper, Kevin, and get to hear a bit more of that.
Yeah, and the thing is, with all those drivers, they're still incredibly busy now as well. The drivers, the co-drivers, the team managers, like, and even for us to try and get them together, there was like, Donagh Evans is, doing gravel crew for his son. Mark Higgins is still competing and doing his film work. Like, each and every one of them, they're still employed in some way, shape, or form in the motor industry.
That's it. Phil Mills is running his own car prep company and competing. Julian Porter is, presenter for ERC and WRC events. Like, these guys are incredibly busy. If they're not running their own businesses, they're still involved then in the sport in some shape or form, or doing both.
Yeah.
And, how Donagh got so many of them together in one place on the same weekend, I'll never know. But because, we found it particularly tough to try and catch up and get a number of them just to sit down and have a chat.
And like another man, I suppose, that we should sort of mention now as well too is Rory Kennedy. Rory was, instrumental in helping to pull a lot of these guys together as well too. Like, Rory has the contacts, and he used them to his full advantage that weekend as well too. And we should tip our hat to him too for helping to pull all that together as well. But anyway, no point in listening to us for much longer here. Let's hear from, first of all, we caught up with Mark Higgins, Stevie Whitford, and Neil Simpson. Unfortunately, anybody watching on YouTube won't see Neil because I don't know, whatever, it didn't seem to record him. And then the second clip then will be Howard Davies, Alister McRae, Ryan Champion, Trevor Agnew, and a man who wished he was there on the night, or on the weekend, Martin Rowe. Mark, the Formula 2 era was probably one of the most exciting times in the BRC history. What was it like to be involved in all that?
It's quite funny, really. When we were actually all involved in it, I think, look back at the Vatnan days and the escorts as the iconic time. But now, 20, 30 years down the line, it was quite a special time, really. You had probably 5, 6 teams that all had 2 to 3 drivers that potentially could be up there fighting for, wins and podiums. So it was flat out everywhere. We had good testing programs to get the cars sorted. It was a proper big commitment from the manufacturers. And, we only did 5 or 6 rallies in that year, but that was our full year. It was fantastic, really. And a great thing to be involved in, yeah, with some great friends. And I think all the people that we worked with, all of us pretty well, have remained very close friends ever since.
Yeah, because it really was a golden era of British rallying, because we had Colin and won the British Championship, or the World Championship, sorry, and then Richard on on the cusp of it, and then there was another layer just below of these young guns coming up through with aspirations of WRC, and it was just the perfect melting pot at the time.
Yeah, and we were all desperate to get into 4-wheel drive cars after driving Formula 2 cars. So we were very jealous of what they were driving at the time. But I think if you could learn to drive in a front-wheel drive car well, it was a great grounding for anything else. I think I remember getting in my first WRC car, and it was a Focus in Ulster. And they said to me that this is quite a nervous car on tarmac. Well, it was like an armchair after driving an F2 car over there. So it was definitely a good training ground.
And Neil, for yourself too, you're coming up through the ranks, and you'd done the one make challenges, the 309, and then getting the opportunity to sit and drive one of these Formula 2 cars. At that time, there was like a ladder of progression for young drivers coming up through the ranks.
There was, and the Peugeot GTI Challenge being that case in point really, and we did that for 3 or 4 years. We're never lucky enough or fast enough to actually win that. But I was lucky enough to win the Shell Scholarship, which gave us a couple of years supported really, really generously by Shell. 1995 and 1996, I think it was. So yeah, I mean, I think as Mark's already said, everybody was on the door handles on every little millimetre of road because there was so much at stake, and some great opportunities out there. With all the manufacturers getting involved and the like, it was brilliant, really. It really was.
Yeah, and did you even realise just probably how good it was at the time, or did you almost take it for granted?
Well, we all used to think it were really good, but Mark Higgins used to wins like hell, so I don't know. There's no changes, is there?
No, nothing changes there. Yeah, I'm never happy.
No, I mean, it was. I think, looking back, I don't think we realised how lucky we were. To be involved at that time, and people like John Horton put on a great championship. It was well supported financially in its own right, and then obviously extremely well supported by the manufacturers who chose it as a really good marketing opportunity to get involved. So yeah, it was good times.
For sure. And Stevie, like from your point of view, you had served your apprenticeship in the McRae Challenge and then into the Seat Challenge as well. Like you were getting the benefit of the the Formula 2 days because Nissan were involved, Seat were involved, manufacturers were involved, and they wanted to be seen to be helping young drivers as well at that point too.
No, for sure. At that time, the One Make series, like what Neil was saying, whether it was Peugeot or Nissan or Seat or whatever, there was so much of that at that time, and that was all a feedback of what the manufacturers were doing at the highest level with these guys. So there was so much opportunity back then, and I mean, if I had been lucky enough to win the Seat Championship or whatever, you got a full factory Formula 2 drive in the British Championship, which was a proper seat, but I wasn't good enough, so that was
it. But there was such a wealth of talent at that stage. Like if you had been lucky enough to win, the Seat Championship, like when you look at who you were competing against, it was the best of the best.
Well, at that time, yes, I suppose it was. There was young drivers. There was opportunity for young drivers then. It's more difficult now. It's obviously it was always expensive, but it's probably more so now, getting into the sport and coming up through the ranks. It's just so much money, in comparison. I was chatting to Alister at the Donagh night one, and he was talking about, back in the day, he was rallying a Nova, and you could buy a headlight for 20 quid, and you could put a new wing and a headlight and a bumper on it. And Max is doing the British Championship, and it's like, hundreds of thousands of pounds now just to compete at that level. That's just, for all the guys, all the young guys coming up, that's just the price of it. I mean, you've got to go and find a budget to do the British Championship at 250k, and that's you at 19 years of age, So there's no opportunity. You've got to find the budget. Whereas Mark was a factory Vauxhall driver when you were 19, Mark? Or
yeah, I think 20. Yeah.
19, 20, alongside Dave Metcalf, whatever, in the factory Vauxhall car, and that was all paid for, So it's just a different era of the sport now, and it was always expensive money wise, but it's just the levels went way through the roof,
Yeah, and like Mark, yeah, that's something there. Like the sport, yes, there is like the Stellantis Cup coming through now, but even then it's expensive for young drivers coming up through. And we've seen with the Stellantis Cup now, Ewan Lloyd is going on now to compete in the European Rally Championship. We need more manufacturer involvement because we've seen what it was like whenever you guys were at the peak.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's when the British Championship started taking a bit of a dive when we lost the manufacturer support. There was always a goal and a stepping stone, and unfortunately, it's so difficult now. And rallying doesn't tick the boxes in this sort of green world we live in like it used to, unfortunately. I mean, my son, he's 20 now, and I'd love him to do a bit of rallying, but I've got no idea where and how you start him without spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. And there's no definite goal. I mean, the big thing, I think, when we all started really, which really started a lot of things moving, was the Shell Scholarship, as Neil touched on. I mean, when that came about for the first year, that I was involved in it was incredible. The prize, and then you started having these one-make championships. You had the Nova, you had the Peugeot 205, and there was always something at the end of it for the kids. And what was nice about it was that sometimes the drivers didn't have the best cars, but they still shone through as the best drivers. Whereas now, to start off with 200 grand minimum for an R5 car before you've got your spares package, before you've done your tyres and entries, it's really hard. And it's a shame. I don't know if it'll change or what we can do to change it, but the costs just do seem very much out of reach for people getting involved in it.
Yeah, for sure. And Neil, from at that time, you had 5-6 manufacturers, and they were there, showing what they had, and we were competing along. We were held in the same party as the British Touring Car Championship. They were on grandstand on a Saturday or Sunday grandstand at times as well, and you were becoming household names through this popularity of the sport at the time.
Well, I mean, it was extremely well covered, wasn't it? Like you say, Steve Ryder used to present it, didn't he, on grandstand on a Saturday afternoon. But back to, as Mark said, I think once the manufacturers started to find it, it wasn't giving them what they needed and started to leave. It was then really that somebody should have stuck their head up and gone, hang on a minute, what's happening here? Why are these guys finding other opportunities to spend the money elsewhere and the like? And I think if you've got a good party, people will come to it.
Yeah, because it needs that something to draw them in. There needs to be a hook.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah, and as you say, five manufacturers all within a chance of victory. Across any of the events. It was a great race. A lot of publicity. And it's not just manufacturers. Once manufacturers get involved, other parties tend to follow. The likes of Pirelli, likes of Michelin, and some really good, genuine investors.
Yeah, and as well as that too, iconic events. We think of Scotland, the Scottish Rally, the Circuit of Ireland, the Ulster Rally, names with heritage as well too. That those names, those rallies actually become events as well too. They weren't kind of events stuck away out in the back of nowhere. Think of the Ulster Rally. It was starting every year. It started in the middle of the city of Belfast.
Indeed.
Rally was in a real heyday, and it was really popular. Even the Joe public was getting to understand what was happening.
Absolutely, it's fantastic times. But it's like Mark says, how do we get back to that? Will we ever get back to that? I'm not sure we will. There's got to be a stepping stone for the youngsters. There's got to be a stepping stone for the investors.
I've got a great idea. Get a load of historic cars and take them to Killarney.
Throw in the world champion as well too. Yeah, it seems to work, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that seemed to tick all the boxes. To be fair, that looked fantastic.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, because it shows that there is still an appetite out there for rally, and it needs the thought process to change. We're going down this blind alley, and it seems we keep doing the same thing and expecting different results.
I just don't think that nobody wants it, that money can buy results. And unfortunately, that seems to be a little bit the way at the top end. Don't get me wrong, the very, very top guys, they're all in the same machinery, but it's easy to buy half decent results at the moment because there's a very few people that can afford to buy these cars. So we just got to bring it down and find some form of championships or challenges to get the young kids and it's just getting that progression where they've got somewhere to go at the end. But I just don't know how that can happen if the manufacturers aren't involved. I mean, you look at the WRC, we've got 2 manufacturers in there. I mean, Ford hanging on by a thread. And it's incredible to watch. Some countries, it's so popular and everybody wants it there. But we've only got Hyundai and Toyota, really.
Yeah. And Conor, you wanted to jump in there, did you?
Yeah, I suppose maybe throw this out to Mark first. There's an awful fondness for the F2 cars when people look back. The rally fans are looking back. What do you think? Why is there that appeal and that interest now looking back at those cars?
I think the big thing is they're always pretty well on the limit, but it's the noise. I mean, we live in an era of turbo cars popping and banging, those things screaming at 10,000 RPM. You could hear them coming from about 5 miles away. So I think that was a very big part of the whole the whole type of car. And they were quite spectacular, and surprisingly spectacular to what everybody thought they were going to be when we went to front wheel drive. And because they were quite tricky, they had a lot of accidents as well. So that always went down well with everybody. But it was just a great learning thing, and it was very easy to. You could have a little mistake, and you could really attack hard and get time back. I mean, you look at some of the cars now. You have a puncture, you might as well go home. That's it. It's all over. But the cars,
because the cars are so much evenly matched now, aren't they,
Yeah,
Mark?
yeah.
You know, and you know, without sounding disrespectful, they can make the average driver look pretty good.
Yeah, I think the modern R5 car, to drive it to 90%, it's a really, really easy car to drive
It is.
it.
Yeah.
You know, to get the next 10% is a different thing altogether. But a lot of people can drive that car to 90% very safely, very quickly, and get some fantastic results out of it. Whereas the F2 cars, to get to 70%, you were doing well. And then to find the next 10 and the next 10 and the next 10 was the hard bit.
It was. Agree.
Stephen, you know, when we look back, like, it was a highly competitive era, you know, and that added to the excitement and the drama. But, like, you know, when you had a championship where potentially 5 people could have taken the crown on the last event, like, it was fairly dramatic stuff.
Well, I was speaking to Gwyndaf at the Donagh's night, and we were just talking about the era, the whole F2 era, and Mark touched on it there. You know, the boys went flat out. That was what you'd done in those days. You went flat out. Mark was flat out. You know, Gwyndaf was flat out. Neil was flat out. Robbie Head was flat out. Alister was flat out, and that's the way it was. And because it was like that, they went over the handlebars some days, and that was just it. And now it's completely different. Like Mark said there, you get a puncture, you know, your race is over. Back then, it was kind of accepted. The boys went flat out, and it was about winning, and it was about speed, and it was about, and now it's slightly different. And, you know, over the last number of years, working with different drivers in WRC at that level, for me, you know, it's like, you know, it's a completely different thing than what it was 25 years ago. You know, when those boys were going, every manufacturer, everybody was behind them, and it was flat out. And that's what made it so good, because that's what it's all about, you know. And that's where that's what we all love. That's what the spectators wanted to see. Every one of them, Mark, Alister, Robbie Head, every weekend, all crashed. No, but they did, because of the speed. It was just flat out. It was shit or bust.
Do you remember the Pirelli rally? It was the last stage of the Pirelli.
I remember that.
Robbie went into it, I think, 5th, and came out of it the winner of the rally.
That's right.
Gwyndaf had gone off. Alister had gone
all
off.
on the one stage.
Yeah, all on the one stage. Yeah.
1997, Mark, wasn't it?
That's it. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And that's the way it was then. But if you look at rallying now, no matter what level, no matter where you're at, no matter if it's, you know, Irish Tarmac Championship, or, you know, French Tarmac Championship, or World Championship WRC2, or, you know, Rally 1, it's not like that. It's different. That's where it's not just as good.
Well, they don't crash as much. That's what you mean.
Well, no, it's not about the crashing. It's about the commitment. The commitment back then, as you know, Mark, was mega. Like, you won the British Championship in '97, and you had the back wheel folded in onto the sunny. Yeah. You know, and you still won the championship. That's what it's about, you know, and we don't see that so much now.
Yeah, Neil, like, you know, going back and looking at that era, and from the night in Donagh's as well, and up in Donegal, there was a lot of war stories told, and you don't seem to get that now in rallying. There isn't the same drama, the same excitement, or, you know, what was it like being in the thick of that?
I mean, it was phenomenal. You know, like Weavy's already said, everybody was absolutely flat out from the word go. You just couldn't lift off, because the man in front of you or the man behind you wouldn't be. So, you know, you were just absolutely on the door handles. It made us all better drivers. It made us more competitive. I think that's true. We had to understand our machinery inside out, to understand setup and things like that. And, you know, it was a proper buzz. That's what I'll say about it. It was a proper buzz. And, you know, like lads have already said, get a puncture nowadays, you might as well go home. Like, get a puncture drop like a minute and a half. You were still in with a shout back then. you were still in with a shout. You know, and I remember coming into the grandstand in the Isle of Man with a back wheel missing off a Golf, and putting out something on the radio saying, "Can somebody please find my back wheel and the rear hub and all the rest of it that goes with it? Because we're in bother here. You know, we're not going any further." Somebody rocked up in a Toyota Corolla, lifted the tailgate up and chucked us a wheel, and off we went. And that was it. You know, it was just absolutely mega. And you know, nowadays, if you're going to watch rallying on YouTube, do you put in the 2023 British Rally Championship, or do you type in the 1998 British Championship or 97? Answer me that question.
I think that's why we're here tonight. I think that answers that question.
I think the one thing that everybody's also forgotten is we did not have a good party after the rally as well, to be fair.
Oh, everybody goes home now.
Everybody goes home now straight after, you know. We never did. We made sure we couldn't get home.
It took a while to get home.
The thing about that is, Mark, that there's so many people, like we're still friends after 25 years. I was speaking to Neil 2 days ago, phoning him up looking a favour, you know, and that all stems from, you know, getting to know people socially, whereas that doesn't happen anymore. There's no social aspect to the events anymore. So you don't get to know, we used to know the mechanics, the co-drivers, you know, the whole team, you know, the team manager, you know, all of that. And that doesn't happen anymore. And that, I mean, we're talking on this Zoom here tonight, and I've known Mark for 30 years and I've known Neil for 30 years. And we're still in contact, you know, we're still, not just tonight, but we're still in contact from time to time, you know, and that, you know, that doesn't happen anymore. And that's part of it too, like what Mark was touching on, the party afterwards, whatever, you know.
Yeah, and I think they were probably even more accessible to the fans back then as well too. You know, we see a lot of rallies now and you go into the service area, the drivers and, you know, in the truck looking at the DVD or whatever, you know, it's and even to try and sometimes even some rallies even to find the service area is quite difficult. And I think there was a better acceptance of, you know, rallying to the public, and the drivers wanted to be there promoting their sport, showing how, you know, what we had.
Well, I think that's you talk about the DVDs and everything, and that's one of the reasons why Kelly isn't doing the full championship. It's all the work that goes in and how that's got to happen, because if you don't do it, the other guy is doing it instead. Well, we again didn't have that. And the other thing we didn't have was mobile phones for the night after as well. So that was a good thing. That's probably why they've cancelled all the parties now. But yeah, the video work that the young drivers and that have to do now it's incredible. We did our recce and that was it. Off we went. You know, if you were lucky enough to have a camera or a GoPro in the car to do a bit of that, fantastic, but not to the extent that they have to do it now. I mean, they know every rally now like the back of their hand. Well, they have to. If they don't do it, they're not going to be fast.
Mark says the level, and over the last, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, I've been working with different drivers in WRC or Chris Meek or Craig Breen and now William Crichton. And the level of each event, you don't have time. There's no, you talk about socialising, there just simply isn't time. So you don't get to know the people the way you did 30 years ago or 25 years ago. It's just different. The whole sport has moved, you know, every year it moves another level. And like Mark said, Callie Rovenpera just decided to take a year off at 22 years of age because, you know, although he's only 22, he's been doing this at a high level for 10 years since he was 12 type thing, you know. So it's just different, you know, and it's, you know, everybody aspires, every young driver aspires to get to the World Championship. But the work and the effort required is, you know, when you're there, once you get there and you have to do it and you do WRC2 and you try to progress through that, it's a pain in the backside, to be honest, compared to, you know.
And then we even, you know, we see what's happening in the WRC and WRC2 trickling down through, you know, guys now competing closer to home are now sitting up at night looking through the DVD and, you know, going back through their in-cars from one thing and another, and even in the service areas too. Like, it's got very professional for an amateur sport.
Well, I've just done the historic championship this year, and I will watch the video before the rally maybe 20 times. We'll then check the notes, and I'll be in the van doing it. And you've got to, because if you don't do it, somebody else now, because it's there. Yeah, even I have to do it now.
Mark, how do you feel about it though? Because I did some rallies a couple of years ago in the WRC, and I just found it overwhelmingly tiresome.
Yeah.
You know, and I just got to a point, and I just thought, do you know what? I'm not sure this is actually doing any good.
The problem is there's no way to change it. It's a bit like I think when Pace Notes first came in, when everybody was on the maps, it was fine. When it went to Pace Notes, everybody had to do Pace Notes. Now there's so much video work, everybody's got to do video work. The best thing, you'd enjoy it, Rallycross. You can remember the track. There's no recce.
Is there
and the whole thing's over in a couple of minutes. Like a few things goes on, so it's great.
There's a bar at the end.
Yeah. So no, it's different, but you know, it's still a fantastic sport, and the buzz you get at the end of the stage between you and the co-driver, nobody can explain that, no matter what goes on. Yeah. But just going back to the Manx and recce's, I remember Alister, Robbie, you know, all the boys would come round to my house before the recce, have a bite to eat. Then we go out and recce at night. So at that, even the recce was social. You know, you were just having a bit of crack and then doing the stages, talking about it. And that went on for the week before the rally as well. So that was all part of the experience of that sort of team of people that we all worked with and, you know, became good friends with.
Conor?
Yeah, and Neil, I love your story because you got thrown a curveball in the middle of all this. We've been handed a diesel Golf. Like, what was that like, and how did you kind of, you know, get your head around that?
Well, it came about because I used to go and knock on Steve Bagnall's door every year and ask him if I could drive one of his rally cars, and he told me I was too slow and too skinny. So I set about trying to be faster and fatter. So
you got the second bit anyway.
I got the second bit all right, didn't I, really? Yeah. So once I was fat enough and somewhere near what he was looking for, he gave me a car to do the 97 Manx in. I had to run it myself and all the rest of it, but I did that. And Alister crashed and Tapio went off, and he really needed me to finish the rally. And I think I was 5th or 6th or something at the time, but he'd made me sign a contract that said if I blew the engine up, I'd buy another one. And there were 50 grand, and I didn't have 50 grand. So the engine builder at the time, Lehman, was telling me to rev it harder. And I said, I'm not revving it any harder than I'm revving it because I've signed a contract with the big chap over there. And I can't afford to pay him if it all goes wrong. And then a friend of mine came over and he said, I've been watching you on the stages. It smokes like hell, that Golf that you're driving. So that didn't go anyway. We did a deal once Alister had crashed and once Tapio had an accident. We did a deal to screw the contract up, and he sort of let me sort of go a little bit faster. I think we finished 4th or 5th or something, which was enough for Volkswagen to win the championship. And he said that he'd look after me for the following year, and I thought, real do. So you can imagine how furious I was when he told me to go to Germany and drive a diesel Golf and see what I think of it. So I did, and he gave me one for the national championship first of all, and then one for the British Championship. But to be honest with you, it was pretty good. I was with Nick Berry, actually, who was head of marketing for Volkswagen. I meet up with him once a year still. As Weavy says, we've got some good friends in the job, and we're chatting all about that diesel Golf. And I'll be honest with you, when I first drove it and when they told me that was the deal, I was pretty furious. I was pretty upset about it. But it turned out all right, and the car was a lot more competitive than anybody thought it would be, and it created an awful lot more interest in and around Volkswagen and I suppose the championship itself, you know.
Like, yeah, because that was blessed by Volkswagen in Germany. Like, they were competing with one in Germany as well too, weren't they?
There were one in Germany, one in Austria, and it was the time when Audi were taking the R18 TDI to Le Mans as well. So they were massively focused on TDI. And you know, we got an awful lot of support from them, and you know, it was a different car to drive. You know, it was all torque and no revs. I think it only had 220 horsepower or something, but 980 newton meters of torque. So, you know, a different thing altogether. And it was very heavy. But yeah, it was was good for me, to be honest. I thoroughly enjoyed that car. Thoroughly enjoyed my time with Volkswagen as well. And whilst Bagnall wouldn't let me in his office for the reasons that I've said already, we soon became really, really good mates. And he retired from Volkswagen and actually came to work for me in the Skoda business as a driver, delivering cars to old ladies, which he thoroughly enjoyed.
Neil was actually my teammate in '98, so I was in the normally aspirated car, the petrol car, and he was the diesel car. And I think you became quite famous with that car, really, Neil. But the only problem was they had to run him last on the road all the time because behind them, all the smoke, they couldn't see anything.
I mean, Mark, when you heard there was a diesel coming to the BRC, like, what was your initial thoughts?
No, well, we knew the talk of them was good, and I think there was a couple of stages where Neil was right in the mix on some of the tarmac rallies. I remember he had some really good times, to be fair. So, although he didn't have the ultimate power, there was the talk there, and in certain conditions, if it was right, it was very competitive. I think if it was a bit lighter, it probably would have been a fantastic car. And if you look at the horsepower you can get out of a diesel now, it probably would have been right up there.
Mm.
You didn't do bad, did you?
It was all right. It was all right. Like I say, I was pretty furious when that was the deal. But nevertheless, came out of it pretty well. And I went on to be test driver for Volkswagen Motorsport in Germany for another 3 or 4 years after that, as a result of building a relationship with the Germans. So it turned out okay, really.
And you were British diesel champion, were you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, bearing in mind there was only me there, it's pretty easy to win.
Like at that time, you had an opportunity, like all the different manufacturers. You're getting World Championship events through this as well too. Had you almost your pick of the manufacturers at the time? Were they coming looking for you?
At the end of '97, we did. Yeah, we were in a really nice position there, and we had a few things on the table. And then I opted to go. Probably made one of the biggest mistakes of my career. I decided to drive the Almira in 1998 in the World Championship, which on paper, if it had gone up from the sunny, it would have been a fantastic car. But unfortunately, we went a bit backwards, and it didn't do me any favors, and it put me on the back foot, really. But yeah, it was great at the end of '97. I was trying to move on to get to where I wanted to be in the World Championship. Maybe I should have stayed in the British. Who knows? But yeah, it was a good time at the end of '97.
Yeah, and you were not only getting paid to drive in the British Championship, but there was opportunities for all the BRC guys to step up to the Volkswagen was sending guys out to WRC, Vauxhall Opel were sending guys out, Nissan. There was we often talk about a ladder progression. The ladder was there back then too.
Yeah, I mean, my deal with Volkswagen with the Golf, I think it was in '99. I was there with that. We did Finland, Australia. We did another couple. There was 4 in the program as part of the deal to do the British Championship on that. So it was a great program. In fact, we did all our testing for the British Championship in that new Mark IV Golf in Kenya. And the engineer Goldstein, who was he just sort of developed the car. He said if the car can do 120k stages in Kenya, it can probably do the British Championship, and it was a great test for it. So that was the start of our program in Kenya for the British Championship.
And Neil, for yourself too, you were getting paid, to be a works driver. Like that was dream come true stuff.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? I mean, it really didn't get any better than that. Our deal was slightly different in that we got a sum of money to drive the car, then we also got a sum of money to run it. So we set up our own team to run the car as well. So it worked tolerably well for us. It really did. And like I say, after that, I went on to work in Germany for Volkswagen for 4 years after that. On all their motorsport test programs. So yeah, it was great times. And I've got to say, I've got 2 Skoda dealerships now, and I wouldn't be sat with 2 Skoda dealerships now if it hadn't been for that relationship that I had with Volkswagen UK.
We talked before, you've seen Mark Fisher was on the cusp of this here too, and unfortunately, we all know what happened with Mark and Bertie and all that too. But you were just at within touching distance of all this. Mark was going to be the next big thing coming up through in British Rally.
Yeah, I mean that was the path in those days, that you started at club level, and then for us guys in Northern Ireland, then we went to the UK, and these one make series that were available to us. I mean, I was lucky enough because I had no money, and I was able to go and get a micro and go and do the micro challenge in the UK, and I don't know who paid for it to this day, but and after that, then a guy offered me it was a Group N RS 2000 front wheel drive to do the British Championship in '97, which was the British Junior Championship at that time for me. Even though I'm the same age as these guys, I was doing the Junior Championship. But to be honest with you, that the car was a car that John Hogland had drove the year before, and I mean the car wasn't very good. Let's say, and we'd done in those days. It was 5 rounds, I think. But it was fully paid. I just had to get myself there with my helmet. And for a young driver, how do you go and do the British Championship? Okay, the car, we were down the field, but the British Junior Championship was 2-litre Group N front wheel drive. So I got a car for free, albeit not a very good car, but still, you just turned up with your helmet. Yeah. Which then led me to do the SEAT Championship the following year, which again was fully paid. So it was okay. I just wasn't quick enough to go any further, which is fine, because it was about the crack for us. So it was good.
Because when we're here, taking 200,000 plus now to do, the British Rally Championship, even back then, it was probably taking a lot of money, but you got 2 years free, and it was still a very amateur sport for you. It was you probably had aspirations, but it was never going to be a career for you.
Well, to be honest, you look at the young kids today, and you talk about that aspiration. I had absolutely zero aspirations. I didn't even follow the World Rally Championship at that stage. We were just turning up on a Saturday with a rally car and going as fast as we could, and that was maybe part of the problem. We didn't really. We just loved going. Like Mark said, there's nothing can, sort of replace that buzz of driving a rally car. No matter what, from a 1300cc car to a world rally car, there's nothing can really replace that. So for me at that time, it was only about that, just going weekend to weekend to weekend, trying to raise some money. Bearing in mind, I had no money. I mean, I was earning £200 a week or whatever it was at that time, and so it was mega. And then you get in, and you got. I mean, I've worked in the sport for the last 30 years, doing different jobs and whatever. So it sort of led to that. You don't make a career as a driver. I didn't, but you can make a career out of the sport, and that's good. And the people that I've met around the world have been around the world working on different events, and the amount of people through that has been good. So a different sort of path than what these guys, who were works drivers at the time, but just it turned out different for me,
Because Mark, even at the world level now, there is very few drivers now that are paid to be there. You think of even Rally 1 guys, there's probably maybe only 3 or 4 that's actually being paid. The rest are paying to be there. And to think, is the sport going backwards rather than evolving?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the likes of poor old Craig, the investment that they and the family had to put in to get to where they got to. He was maybe starting to get to a point where it might have just started to repay itself. But it was very, very close to that, and look at the talent that he had and what he could do in a car. And he's still having to pay to get to that level till the very last few years, really. The investment's immense, and you're not talking hundreds of thousands, you're talking millions and millions. And
but surely that would change, wouldn't it? If the let's say the events or the championships became more desirable, the promoters did a better job of promoting it. You would then turn the tables round, as it was years ago that when we were doing the British Championship, Mark. You'd imagine that, like you said, World Rally Championship now has got 2.5 manufacturers in it. So there's a reason for that, and the reason for that is that manufacturers don't see it as an appropriate place to market their products in a cost-effective way.
Well, especially this country, Neil, and you've got to look at it. We haven't even got a Rally GB. We haven't even got
Correct.
a British round of the World Championship, which is just criminal. Most of the drivers, a lot of the drivers come from this country. They all come to the British Championship, are used to learn their trade. We can't even put on a WRC rally, which I think is shocking. Really, it's.
I think you're right, Mark. That lack of the WRC of rally in the country, in the UK, as it were, and the UK drivers, then the sport's dying. Because if you look at Portugal, where Chris Meek has been, you've got manufacturer support. You've got manufacturer money. You've got manufacturer, paying for drives and seats and that's ongoing. That's like maybe not where there's 5 manufacturers, but there's 2 or 3 manufacturers who are actually paying the drivers in the local championship in Portugal and Spain actually as well. So it's happening in other countries. It's just not happening in Ireland or UK like it used to. But
I think if you went to most dealers in the UK and said Rally 2 car, bit of rallying, like the car you've got in the showroom, they wouldn't have a clue what you're talking about.
No, they wouldn't.
And that's a shame, really. I mean, one of the big things that's changed everything, I may be wrong here, but we had 4 channels back in the day. So you almost stumbled across rallying on Grandstand or whatever. The coverage is great, what they do on the WRC, but you've got to know where it is and you've got to find it. So you're not taking it outside the box. And even us involved in the sport, it's very hard to watch rallying, unless you really know when it's on and what's coming on and when the apps are. But that's the way the world's gone with a lot of sports now. And there's so much choice where there wasn't the choice back then.
Yeah. And Neil, there is the ingredients is there now with the Rally 2 cars. Like there's 6 or 7 manufacturers there. Like they're wanting to sell cars, and it probably is if there was the way it was looked at, the way it was marketed, there could be so many opportunities.
There could. I mean, you obviously I'm quite close to Skoda. I've been for some time, and speaking to the guys in Milorad Boleslav, for them it's a commercial product is rallying. If you imagine they've sold something to the order of 500 Rally 2 cars now, and every Monday morning the phone rings and everybody wants a load of spare parts. That is a great business. But like you say, if my view is if the WRC was Rally 2 cars with a kit that you could put on the car to do a WRC rally and do a WRC rally only, i.e. the kit is only available to do a WRC rally with, that would be the answer. Because you'd get private teams, attracting manufacturer support. Again, I'm quite close to Top Sport, who run the Skodas for Skoda, and there'd be an awful lot more of that. But it just seems that those that be in Geneva want to see WRC as Rally 1 cars, space frame chassis, goodness knows what. Well, it's a huge amount of money. I heard that it's to the order of about £10 million a month or something. Sorry, €10 million a month now that manufacturers are spending. That is a hell of a lot of money, and you need a return on that. And unless you're going to get that return, the chances of any other manufacturers coming into the sport are really, really slim. Yeah. Skoda, I know for a fact Skoda do it as a commercial part of the business. If it doesn't make money, they wouldn't do it. Yeah. So there's got to be a blend of that and a blend of the cars competing at the front.
Yeah, because Stevie, yes, it's spectacular. The Rally 1 cars are spectacular to watch, but we've seen with the Micro Challenge here, and guys want to go out and compete in cars that are a level playing field. I want to go faster than everybody else. You want to have a fair fight.
Well, I think if you take the Rally 1 out of the equation, and you go to Rally Finland and you watch a Rally 1, the Rally 2 looks terrible. But if the Rally 1's not there, the Rally 2 looks amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Good point.
That's the thing, and that's what they need to realise. I think, like Neil said, you have so much scope there for manufacturer. You could have 5 or 6 manufacturers. But the problem is when you've got Rally 1, I know that 2027 they're going to go to Rally 2, but it depends on what way they do that. They're already talking about the space frame roll cage or whatever that they've designed this on safety because they had to, because the cars had 500 horsepower. So then they think, well, we can't take a step back in the safety, so we've got to bring that incorporated into Rally 2. Well, do you really, if you've only got 300 or 280 or 290 horsepower? But then they can't be seen to be compromising safety, so then they have to do that. Then you end up with a special car, and they put a cap on the cost, and the manufacturers are complaining that they can't meet this cap already, and that's not coming in until January 27. So I think Rally 2, like Neil says, bolt-on kit, Rally 2 for me is the way forward. Every country has full of Rally 2 cars. Go to Spain, France, Germany, all the national championship. Look at our own tarmac championship. Look at the British championship. There was 50 Rally 2 cars started the first round of the British championship this year. 50. That's mega. So
well, that tells you that the formula's right, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That tells you that it's right.
So if you then bring that into WRC, Cali, Rove, Paris, Sebastian Ogier, Thierry Neuville, they're still going to win.
Yeah.
And their cars will be factory cars. They'll be 6 months ahead of the car that you can buy. So it's back to that, and you want to go to your showroom and buy a homologation special. That's been gone over the last number of years.
Yeah, it's only really the Yaris is that kind of, like, it looks something like the rally car, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
so they kind of need to get back to that way to attract manufacturers. If you have a cost cap of 360,000 euros or 380, I can't remember. That's achievable. You can have 3 of those cars for the price of one Rally 1 car, and they've got Toyota have run 5 Rally 1 cars next year.
Yeah.
That's 15 Rally 2 cars. 15. We don't need that. So I think that has to be the way. And then that might in turn go back to when Mark and Neil were doing British Championship. Your local importer manufacturer would pay for your local championship because it's on the back of what the World Championship's doing. But that needs to be promoted, right? And there's an issue there, in my opinion. But how you fix that, I don't know.
Yeah, and like Mark, something you touched on, there's no Rally GB. Like, remember growing up and watching, every night in Top Gear, and you might have David Llewellyn or Jimmy McRae or whatever who had the car to the same specification as Juha Kinkin and these guys. The Group A days, and maybe the car, maybe as Stevie said, maybe we're 6 months behind development, but they were close to what the top guys had. Those days have long gone.
Yeah, well, it was a chance for the local boys to have a go at the end of the year, wasn't it? And everybody you spoke to, if you spoke to 100 people in the street, 98 of them would know what the RAC Rally was.
Yeah.
Unfortunately now, not a clue.
Yeah.
I was working on a film recently, and one of the girls that was there, we were chatting about stuff, and we got talking that I do a bit of rallying. She said, "What's rallying then?" She said, "Is that like Formula One in the trees?" I thought, oh my God. but that was, she'd never even seen a rally car, never seen one. Whereas I don't think growing up, I knew anyone that didn't know roughly what a rally car was. So just how things have changed.
Because even if you probably ask them on the street to name a rally driver, it's probably going to be drivers from the 80s or the 90s or maybe even before that as well too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Conor?
Well, after the top 5, if you're not watching it all the time, it's very hard to know who they are anyway. It's only the big names. So,
and probably it was the way that the coverage was done. There was a story told. We almost thought we knew these drivers. With Mark Higgins with his maximum attack and one thing about, and we're not getting to see the personality really behind. Like Kelly, Rove and Perra come to Killarney a couple of weeks ago, and everybody was blown away with just how open he was, how much time he took with the fans. Because we hadn't seen that side of him before.
Yeah, well, it's so professional on the championship. They can't tell you when they've got a problem with the car. They can't talk about anything. Everything's so guarded because everything's on the camera. It's incredible how secretive it all has to be because they don't want to give anything away to the competitors. Whereas we'd tell everybody and get everybody else helping us. That was part of the plan. All the other guys would dive in with the spanners and we'd all try and keep each other going, which was another great part about the sport. Whereas now, as a manufacturer, Hyundai can't help Toyota. It's become very, very professional, which is not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, but it's just very different.
Yeah, because Neil, I'm sure many a time, like it was always the adage with rallying, no man left behind. Like you were probably at the end of stages helping boys out, changing wheels or whatever, and I'm sure you were on the receiving end of it many a time as well.
Well, you'd come at the end of the stage with bits missing or whatever, and people say, "Oh yes, I saw your bumper in the hedge back there. Do you need any help? Have you got everything you need? And do you need a tow or anything like that?" And you do the same for anybody. You do the same for anybody. Like Mark says, because it's got so expensive. These manufacturers spending like 120 million pounds a year, 120 million euro a year. Sorry, it'd probably be wrong if that sort of behaviour still existed. And as you say, Sebastian Ogier, being a case in point, said a little bit too much and got fined for it. What does that say about the sport? It's just not like it was.
No, Stevie. Even the bad language, everything now has been censored. The kind of the fun's going out of it a wee bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Marcus Gronholm and Timi Ratajkowski in the poll up as. Max Verstappen, what did he say? And he got fined. He had to do community service. Are you having a laugh? But I think Mark touched on it. There was no phones, there was no social media, there was no nothing back then. Thankfully for Mark. But it's just different. It's just different. You'll never go back to that. It's just different. I think just to make the sport closer to what it was again, I think we need more manufacturers, and that's the bottom line. As regards all the good old days, they're gone, and they'll never ever be back, unfortunately.
And I suppose we better start wrapping things up now, but we'll go back to the good old days. We had a weekend in Donegal of celebration. Stevie, you were there. What a weekend it was.
Yes. I mean, it was good. It was very good. I don't think anybody that was there regretted going by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I've talked to a couple of people since, and they couldn't make it, and they regretted not being able to be there. It was a fair play to Donagh. It was probably never happen again, to be honest. Getting all these guys in the same place in the stables with the actual cars that were part of that championship is just so unique. And as I say, fair play to Donagh. He put on you just couldn't imagine how he even pulled that together, and it was over 2 nights, so everybody that was there, I'm sure Mark will agree. Neil, you didn't actually make it. Were you there, Neil? Oh yes, you were. That's right. Sorry. Sorry, Neil. Do you remember being there, Neil?
I sort of remember the first couple of hours of it, and then I sort of remember the Wednesday afterwards when I woke up.
It was. We all had a fantastic time. It was great to see everybody, and everybody made the effort. So many people made the effort to come. It was really good.
Yeah, because Neil, to get a phone call to say come over to a museum in the wilds of Donegal for a weekend, it would be good crack. You had to put a lot of faith in Donagh to provide a weekend, but boy did he provide a weekend.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, I'd never met Donagh before that. My co-driver, Mike Gibson, Gibby, he knows him, and you've got to come to this event, Donegal. Well, I've never left Donegal without a hangover. So I think that I'll be well up for that, and walking into there and meeting everybody after all these years. But back to what we were saying before, I haven't seen you, Mark, for years, but it was just like yesterday. Alister McRae, just like yesterday. Me and Weavy see a bit of each other, from time to time. But it was just like yesterday. Honestly, it really, really was, and so great to see everybody. It's fantastic.
Because you could feel it in the room. It was just like stepping back 30 years. It was just such a natural flow to the weekend. Everybody just seemed to click once again.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was brilliant. Like Weavy says, will it happen again? Let's hope so.
Mark, I suppose final word to yourself. You've been over in Donnagh's before. You were over at Deja Vu a couple of years ago, but that weekend just passed was. I think it will be going to be one of those nights that's going to be long remembered.
Oh yeah, 100%. It was one of those things. Actually, it was very easy to be busy, and it's a lot of hassle to go there. But it was so glad that I went over, and I think everybody said the same. There was a few of us. I know Robbie wasn't sure because he had to come from York and said, "Come on, we better do this because it'll never happen again." And it was just like the old days, as I say, it's just easy because everybody's our mates. We're all friends. We all shared the same interest. And what Donagh did and put on is quite incredible. I don't know anyone that would do that. Hopefully he enjoyed it as much as we did. And we're all very, very grateful for getting us all together again because these things don't happen very often. And to get that turnout was incredible.
Yeah, because it was like there was no obvious gain for Donagh. That's only the enjoyment of having all you guys reunited with the car.
Yeah, and what he did for all the marshals and everything the next day. Unfortunately, a lot of us had to get back, so we missed that, which was a real shame. But he's what rallying needs, we need people like him to create this interest, to keep the things alive. And his passion for the cars and the sport and that era is, very impressive.
Yeah, and to see your cars again too, that must have really took you down memory lane.
They never looked that good. Yeah, especially after we'd finished with them.
What can we say? That was the heyday of British rallying.
Yeah, I think, well, definitely for myself and for everybody on this call, it probably was. I think if you look back to the 70s and 80s, when my dad was doing it and he had the likes, Ari Vatanen, Hannah Mikkola, Stig Blomqvist, these guys coming across, they would probably argue with us. But I think in the 90s, you had 7 manufacturers, all with 2 works drivers, then other semi-private teams. And I don't think there's been any other time in the British Championship that you've had that manufacturer support. So it was a great time and very, very competitive.
Yeah, and because, whenever they were trying to introduce the Formula 2 regulations, it probably wasn't, accepted that this was the way forward, but it definitely, there was something that intrigued the manufacturers to get involved as well.
Yeah, when obviously the year before, or in 93, I was driving the Subaru Legacy, 4-wheel drive, Group A car, great car to drive, and then, the championship went 2-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, 2 litre, and as a driver, I probably even at the time thought, is this the right thing to do? But you only need to look at what happened and the fact that most manufacturers had a road car capable of being built into a Group A Formula 2 car. So, all of a sudden you had that manufacturer support, which you didn't really have in the previous years. You did have Subaru and Malcolm was there with the Michelin Pilot Escort, but to go from 2 semi-works manufacturer teams to 6, 7 manufacturers all with works drivers in there, I think it was at the time there was doubts, but it definitely proved to be the right choice, and it lasted for 10 years.
Yeah, and Howard, you were one of those guys like yourself from Gondaff. You were in the Group A car, the pink Sierra. Everybody kind of has great memories of that car. But you had kind of hit the limit in that stage. Then you were back in Group N car. This gave you a new lease of life then back then as well.
Oh, definitely give us a lease of life for probably another 8 to 10 years. And I think it was a follow-on from the touring cars, really. I think the manufacturers needed to do something different. I don't really know who was behind it and who was ultimately made that decision, but it's one of the better decisions that our governing bodies ever made. And like Alister said, to get the manufacturer involvement was actually fantastic. And then you had quite a few European drivers and the Finns and the French all wanted to get involved. And it was good. It was a fantastic era. And it was very, very enjoyable. I mean, it was a bit stressful at times, because there was a bit of pressure on you. But I tell you what, I'm so glad that we were involved. And that reunion brought it all back, And since then, I've been just thinking, you're driving along, you're just thinking of stories and thinking about things that happened. And one thing that flashed in my mind last night, actually, was we won in Ulster in 98, the first year, and we went testing the week before the rally, and it took the car out of the trailer and the engine blew. So we didn't actually test. We didn't do any testing at all. And then we went back up to Belfast, and I think it was a company called Solution F were doing the engines, and they flew a couple of guys over, and they took over this workshop. I think it was one of Davy Greer's workshops, and they covered everything in white sheets. And these two guys came over and they stripped this engine and rebuilt it with bits that they had. And I remember the guy saying, the engine is no good, it's poor, but it's the best we can do, you know? And we went on and we won that rally, that Ulster. And that was just things like that you remember, you know, historical moments and notes. And I remember finishing the last stage and, you know, going over the radio and saying that we'd won and the stress that we'd had that previous week. It was like it was a brilliant feeling. And there's lots of everybody's got stories like that to tell somewhere along the line, you know.
And Martin, you know, we were just saying there, like, what a fantastic time it was of the Formula 2 cars. And, you know, you come from the Group N, you know, we come up through the Shell Scholarship, to be given a works car in this, like, environment. It must have been all your Christmases come at once.
Yeah, you sort of don't realize at the time what an amazing opportunity and what a great time of rallying and motorsport it was in. You know, you're quite selfish really in thinking about your goals and your path. And yeah, just to be involved and with some amazing teams, it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, because like this was the proper works teams. This wasn't like, you know, even farmed out. Like, you know, Renault was coming. You know, this was a French team running French cars with French engineers. This was no two-bit operation.
No, I mean, my opportunity with Renault was, yeah, we had test cars. The guys would come all the way from France for every single rally, which, you know, the scale of the thing was huge. I remember finding out what they spent on clothing one year, and it was like, what? Just on clothes? So, you know, the budget was big, the cars were amazing, and yeah, the results were good as well because of that.
Yeah, and you know, I suppose like we should maybe like Trevor. You like at this stage you were working your way up through the ladder, and all. Like, was this something that you were looking at these guys, and this was something you really aspired to?
Yeah, it was different for Neil and I because we were in the Civic with Asquiths, who are clearly a fantastic team, and they've brought so many young lads through the ranks. And I think it was really 1998 in Donegal when Vauxhall brought Yarmo over for that rally. Don't know if you remember, but they did it as a test on that event. John Nixie, God bless him, he's just left this world. He was watching our times against Yarmo in the Civic, and I think that was a big opportunity for us. That put us on the radar with Vauxhall. But at that time, you know, we had a couple of good years in the Civic, and by the time we came to like towards the end of '98, we'd actually 4 manufacturers, because at that point Citroen were thinking about coming in with Steve Johnson. And so Citroen, there was Vauxhall, there was Volkswagen, the Seat. And because Vauxhall had 4 World Championship rallies, which again is a bizarre thing. We talked to Alister or Howard about it. Like, Alister went to Australia in the F2 car. You know, it's just ridiculous. You know, business class flights as well, I think I remember. And Howard, of course, and Gwindaf were over in Finland. I went over with them in '98 to the rally as well to support the works team. So these are the opportunities, you know, and exactly as Alistair was saying, touring cars at that time were going crazy. You know, I moved to England at the time, close to ProDrive, and like some of the touring car drivers are getting 600 grand. It's just close to Hard and Gwindaf's salary, like, but but that's the money. Like, manufacturers you're actually getting paid to do it. And you look at, like, I was watching the Cambrian yesterday, watching Max, you know, when his stage at the end, it was fantastic, but they're certainly not getting paid, and it's costing a lot of money now to the British Championship. If you look at the last round of the British Championship yesterday compared to our Manx's last round, and the party in Summerlands, like, it was totally different. And as the boys will remember, you go over to the Isle of Man a week beforehand. I knew when Martin Rowe was getting serious on the Saturday of the recce, he came into the pub and he was drinking lemonade. I knew there's something not right here. There's Renault gear on. And then he took his dad out for a run in the McGann with the lights on. I remember that night, didn't you?
That was awesome, actually. Yeah, they just turned up outside the house and then took my dad for a spin around. That was pretty cool.
With the lights on in the McGann in the middle of the night. It's a bit like Donegal. The year you came to Donegal, '98, was it? There was a bit of late night revelry happening in the McGann, was there? Oh, it was a mechanic driving it, was it?
Yeah, that wasn't Martin. No.
That wasn't me. I don't know much about this story, but
no, of course
we heard one of the boys had been out to check the lights and created a bit of interest with the local police, and they followed him. They had roadblocks. They were doing all sorts of stuff. And the story goes they got chased by numerous police cars and then radioed the mechanics. They got the garage door open. The garage door flew up. The McGann went in. They shut the door and turned all the lights off. And there wasn't many places where a McGann kit car would be staying, and the police obviously knew. So they went and dragged some young guy out who wasn't actually driving, but the I won't mention names, but one of the more senior people said, yeah, it was him. And so the police took this young lad away, and I think they put him in jail overnight. Got him out on bail, and anyway, we turned up the next day, didn't know anything about this at the time. Well, as it happens, about 18 months later, we went testing, and this young lad was with us, and he was getting a bit twitchy, and I think they jumped bail or something, and we were north of the border, but then he was getting worried because the test venue was very close to the south, and they'd obviously invited the police along to close the road. And this young lad who was out on bail technically was getting really worried. And then we found the full story. So, yeah, good times.
It's quite interesting, actually. We were probably testing was in Dock, which is just south of the border where I live. And that's when we done the deal with Mike Nick before the Ulster Rally in 1999. So we did the deal for the following year just in case the Ulster went wrong. Of course, we won the bloody thing. And Chris Meek was telling a story about, because he was mechanicking for us on the rally, and the last service, Neil was in the back of the service van and Mike Nick trying to do the deal, trying to redo the deal, get more money in the back of winning the Ulster. Yeah.
And like Alister, you touched on the touring cars was the big thing at that time. Like Saturday grandstand, and like rallying was up there. It was getting maybe not equal coverage, but getting great coverage, and was turning you guys into household names.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I think that's where the manufacturers, their involvement was there for that reason as well, because you were actually getting proper publicity on events on TV. So it allowed them to justify the money they were spending. The Renault couldn't afford to pay Martin that 250 grand they got every year if they weren't getting TV coverage
and testing every week.
Yeah.
How come you didn't win more rallies?
Yeah, it was nowhere near 250 grand, but I remember like the days of selling my squash racket to try and buy a tire, and then getting some money, actually getting paid to drive, and just getting something to pay.
How expensive was your squash racket?
I got 40 quid for it. But just going back to those days of just doing anything at all just to get to the events, and then somebody offering you a salary at all, even if it was £2.50, it was like, wow, I don't have to pay anymore.
And Ryan, at this stage, you were still, you're a few years younger than some of these guys. You were that, the up and coming young guy doing the one make championships and all. Like, this showed you that there was a level there you could reach and it was attainable.
Yeah, you got me completely by default because I was really on the fringes. But it was like as Alister already touched on, to see BRC been so closely fought out at the front between so many manufacturers, because as we've already said, there's been some incredible names. I dropped Chris Ingram a message last night just to say following in some illustrious company winning the British Championship, because regardless of the peaks and troughs it's had, the names that have won it are just incredible over the years. But there was only ever really, a couple of front runners year on year. And to see in the Formula 2 days, not only the amount of drivers that could compete, but the amount of cars that were competing at that level as well. So, really interesting to see. And it obviously developed very quickly. In some ways, it came and it sort of exploded and it was incredible, and then unfortunately disappeared quite quickly at the end.
Yeah, because as you say, it exploded onto the scene, like at the World Championship level, the Formula 2 category. Yes, it was good and all that, but it never really caught the imagination the same way it done the BRC.
No, I mean, I guess the difference for the BRC was it was always the number one category, and as we see at World Championship level, regardless of what the second category is, it's always the second category. And in some ways, that's why ERC is working really well for Rally 2 now, because it, if you win in Rally 2, you win in the rallies. Whereas regardless of what you're doing in in WRC in a Rally 2 car, he's still a little bit, in the shadows, if you like. Whereas F2 was obviously the category, and it was maybe its own success towards the end that did see it drop off quickly, because obviously, as Martin was mentioning, that the costs and the budgets were just absolutely huge. I mean, if you imagine keeping Howard in clothing alone, I mean that would have been some job. But just even off the stages, I mean, as I think we all remember the Seat girls and the offstage antics that the manufacturers were doing. I don't think any of us had seen that level of publicity away from the stages as well as just on it.
Yeah, you got to take your hat off to Gary Savage and Seat, like, because they marketed the British Championship in 96, 97 onwards, like, and that was a huge thing, absolutely.
Yeah, because Howard, like, you were part of that machine as well too. It was completely different from what we'd ever seen before in rallying.
Yeah, it was completely alien to us as well, really. And at the time, it was a little bit of a hindrance, really, because it took. We always thought it took finance away from sorting the car out and getting things right. But looking back on it, somebody once told me that we were responsible for a massive crime wave in the UK, because we promoted the hot hatch, which was then which started the sort of youngsters driving XR2s and Volkswagen Golfs and tearing around the estates and harassing everybody, and that's what we were doing, but on a professional level and in a controlled environment, But yeah, it did sort of bring a different idea to it all. Nobody else jumped on that bandwagon. None of the other manufacturers had any Seat girls, as they said. But I think if it had carried on, but I think that the nail in the coffin was when Citroën developed the Zara two-wheel drive, the F2 car. And they went to Catalonia and they beat the world rally cars. Do you remember? I think it was Jesus Puras or Galski. And then, of course, the WRC thought, oh, we got to slow these cars down. We got to do something to reduce this category. And that's when it started to fall apart. But, for 10 years, it did a fantastic job, in fairness, Yeah. And I think the spectacular of these cars, they weren't that spectacular to watch if you went to watch on a junction, but if you watched it somewhere fast, they were terrifying, actually, because they didn't handle that well, and there was always, as you saw it on that weekend, there were a lot of accidents. Alister McRae.
It was just one accident, Howard. One accident. They just kept replaying
it. Oh God!
From lots of different angles.
Yeah.
But
it was fantastic. I mean, I look back and I just think, bloody hell, how lucky were we to be involved in that?
Because Alister, at that stage, rallying was like front page news. It wasn't hidden in some wee obscure corner of the newspapers. This was, it was making all the right vibes. It was getting all the right publicity. Colin, your brother, Richard Burns were at the top of the world. You guys were, out there doing this thing in the BRC. I think rallying could learn a lot from back then as well.
Definitely. I think I know, well, obviously I've been in Australia for a long time now, but in Australia it's either Aussie Rules football or V8 supercars here. I think in the UK now it's football. So they don't, the motorsport's not covered the way it should be, but then I guess that's down to the promoter of the sport. The other sports are doing a far better job. And getting on mainstream media has obviously changed a lot with social media. There's so many different avenues to promote your product now, whereas back then it was really TV. And as you say, we were on Sunday Grandstand, so that was you were on with the football, you were on with the touring car. So it just allowed or gave the manufacturers justification to spend money.
For sure. Connor, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, when you look back and with 7 or more manufacturers involved, Alister, like normally the difficulty is finding somewhere to get a seat, but you were probably spoilt for choice. Like, how difficult was it choosing who to drive for?
I don't think there wasn't many. It might not for me anyway. There wasn't many times where you could just say, look, I want to go and drive for for Volkswagen. I want to go and drive for Nissan. I want to go and drive here. It all seemed to just happen a bit organically, really, that you were in a certain place at a certain time. With Nissan, they approached me. We knew it was coming out in '94, the new F2 regs, and I was approached by them, and that was the kind of start of it. Then from there, I went off and tried to have a go at going straight, to the WRC. It didn't pay off, and then it just happened that Steve Bagnall approached me then, saying, "Like, do you want to come and help us with some tests and some development of Volkswagen?" Then that turned into, I think, okay, I won the championship with Nissan, but I got my intro into the World Championship with Volkswagen because not only did we do the British Championship, but we did. I mean, one year we did 8 WRC rounds. So that gave me the opportunity to get into the WRC, into the World Championship. But I don't think there wasn't many times that you sat and you picked what team you wanted to be in. It was a case of you were in the right place at the right time, or just happened to be speaking to Steve Bagnall or whoever at the time, and that's how it happened. So, but just the fact that there was so many drivers in that position, that's what made it such a great decade of rallying.
Howard, as the cars evolved, we saw they got wider and bigger arches and all the rest. Like, when you got to the likes of the Manx and the Ulster, how difficult was it on some of those narrow lanes?
Yeah, I remember at the start of the Ulster one year, looking at the car on the ramp, thinking, "Christ, that's going to get stuck down some of these lanes." But we didn't have much problem, really. I think that question would be better directed to Mark Higgins, who had that Almera, and he wedged it on one of the walls in the Isle of Man. But no, I mean, the car towards the end, the cars were developed really well and did handle really well. And if you watch that Megane, that was an incredible car towards the end. Like,
yeah, Martin, did you find that it became a bit of a handful towards the end, or was it okay?
No, there was some roads, particularly I don't know the name of them, but there was a couple of linking roads on the Isle of Man where the edge of the tyres were pretty much on the grass through the lanes. But there's always a compromise between, your ride and handling, and we were probably a little bit slower down that section, but on the wider sections, the smoother stuff where the car's wider, stability gives you an advantage. It works in your benefit. So there was some places for sure. I remember it was really tight, but then that was just part of the
Martin,
package.
there was one bit of road if you go to West Baldwin, the village of West Baldwin, and you turn left through some pillars and you go down a long straight. I remember going down there and I couldn't actually visualize the end of the road. The road was so bumpy that my bloody eyes were hurting. Do you remember? And that's where Higgins hit the back of the Almera.
I remember. Yeah, I remember well. Yeah. But no, I mean, some places, like you say, it was a bit of a disadvantage, but most of the time it was an advantage. So, yeah.
Yeah. And like, Trevor, we've said with regard to the manufacturers, the volume involved, and it was competitive between the manufacturers, but it was so competitive between the drivers and the crews as well. I think, was it the 97 Manx final round? Was there 5 people could have walked away with the title that year? Like, how close was it?
Yeah, 97 was the one. And of course, Seth drafted in. There's Robbie Head, Kenny McKinster, I think they drove one of their cars as well in that event, just to try and take points away from Mark. And of course, the drama went right down to the last stage when he buckled the wheel and underneath it. And the Curras, was it? I can't remember exactly where it was. But yeah, that probably was the year, 97. As Alister was saying, for me, the late 70s, when you had all the guys coming over to the Ulster and Circuit of Ireland, she had Vatten and Marco Ole and all of that. That was a golden era, definitely. But then 97, I would say, is probably the year with all the manufacturers involved and going right down to the wire, even to the last stage. And Higgins tried to throw it away as well.
And Alister, going into that, the 97 Manx, like the whole build up, the whole thing was who was going to take this crown, how was it going to go, and like this was like it was drama, and every stage everyone just seemed to change, and different stories were evolving all the time.
Yeah, no, it was. Obviously, there's I don't know if you've seen it, but there was some good footage of a yellow Golf that got it wrong in that event. But no, it was. I mean, there was the potential for 5 to win it, and it was chopping and changing all the time. Howard will know that they just probably 5 miles before I went off, they went off. So you see, for me, you saw them and you think, well, the potential's there, and then literally 5 minutes later, we're lying with a car that wasn't going to go anywhere. So it did change, and it continued right to the very end of the rally itself.
Yeah, and like Martin, that was your first BRC one, I think, was it?
Yes, it was, and I went into that rally as a bit of an outside chance of any good result, and driving down that road and seeing Gwyndaff and Howard parked up on one side, and then further along there's like an airplane accident happened, and there's a yellow Golf somewhere, or most of it, and then it's just like, oh, there's one, there's two, oh, then you see yourself coming up the leaderboard. So it was an amazing weekend.
Was that the year the drive shaft popped out and miraculously popped itself back in again, or was that year or the year after?
That might have been 98. I can't remember, but it's out near Peel, and we come flat out down to a chicane, and going through the chicane, literally I lost drive, and the drive shaft had popped out, or one had popped out, and then once everything cooled down, it went back in. And I remember swearing at the time, and I was like effing and blinding I had a camera in the car and everything else. I'm like, oh, that wasn't very professional. But it popped back in, and then we didn't have a drama for the rest of the rally. So pretty lucky, that one.
Yeah, and like for a Manxman to win his first rally, his first international rally and his home rally, that must have been really, really special.
Oh, yeah. I mean, winning a rally on your home ground was amazing. But fighting with another local, Mark, over that rally, and I remember saying to him, the best outcome is I'll win the rally, you win the championship. And he was like, well, that would be a fair deal, but I'm not giving up, sort of thing. And I remember going to the bar in whichever hotel we were staying at, and Steve Bagnall was there. And Bagnall was, he was like, if you beat Higgins, I'll buy you a Guinness. There's an incentive.
It's a bit rough for you to push Ringer off the bonnet, though.
That was the next year.
He's won it so many times, hard to keep up.
Yeah.
But Ryan, like we often look back and we, sometimes you think it's rose tinted glasses, that was the time, or that was the golden era. But this was an epic time in rallying in the British Championship.
Oh yeah, and don't forget, like in those days, it was roadside service as well, because I remember that 97 Manx, and it was the Curras, Trevor, you're right, and I remember coming down those steps and just seeing this groove start in the road, and this groove got bigger and bigger all the way to the end of the stage, and it's like, what the hell has made the groove in the road? And obviously it was the back corner of a Nissan Sunny, and then there was all the boys out the back of the patrol putting a back corner on the Sunny at the end of the stage, and that probably added to it as well. We all remember those days of roadside servicing as well, that those sort of things could get fixed, whereas any other time that would have been Mark out of the rally. So that same rally, I got 2 punctures going down one of the Baldwins, went off over the bridge, and I borrowed a spare wheel out of a road car and put a standard road tire on to do the next stage, because I only had one spare. And you could get away with those sort of things then. That was Terry Harriman's idea, by the way, Trevor. So thanks to Terry been in with me. I was in a Subaru, stopped by the Subaru estate here, they'll have a wheel, which they did. But there was just all those stories as well that really added to it, and that was part of rallying then, wasn't it? It wasn't just the rally cars, it was the vans, it was the chase cars, the mechanics still love talking about those days of rallying, because it was very different to being sat in a service park for the weekend. The mechanics got involved in it. They were really involved in every part of the event, and like I said, they could really make things happen that unfortunately just they don't get a chance to do nowadays.
No, and Trevor, like there was a name mentioned there, Terry Harriman. Like he was a big part of this as well too. He was the manager of the Renault team from the come over at the start, and he helped probably. He was a transition between the French team and the English regulations and all. He was able to translate and all. Like Terry, an absolute legend here in Ireland, and what he done to help promote the BRC at that time was just probably we don't even realise just how much it was on his back.
Yeah, Terry had always a lot of fingers and a lot of pies. He was Camel Trophy man, remember all those years ago. And you're absolutely right. So he was co-driving Robbie Head in the Clio, I think, originally. And went on to be the team manager and worked through it. And of course, the Dear God moment in '83 was Terry on the Manx as well. So yeah, and it's people like that. And just literally it started with the Clio was the first time I remember him being involved in it. And Alan Oriel then was in the McGann, remember? And then of course Martin came through. Like you did the Manx in the Golf, didn't you? Was that 97, 98? 97 must have
The
been.
Golf was 96.
96.
So yeah, that
Right.
was 96. Then Renault
But that's
97.
probably what put you back on the map again, wasn't it?
Absolutely. After the Peugeot days in 95, I didn't have much going on in 96. And yeah, phone call from Steve Bagnall and Blackie saying, "Oh, do you want to go over to the Isle of Man?" And obviously you say yes. And at the time, Tapio was in the main car doing the whole championship. And then I got drafted in just for that one rally. So yeah, I remember the plasticine gearboxes they were trying to run, and we nursed it through to the end, got a result. So that put me back in. And yeah, I remember having a conversation with Renault afterwards on the island still about the following year. So that put me back in the picture again.
And was the drive pretty much nailed on from there, or was there still some negotiations to do?
Um, Trying to think. Things progressed, and then I literally signed saying I would be a number two to Robbie all the way through, and that was my position to sort of help Robbie. And a couple of times I had to pull over and let him go through, and that was quite frustrating at the time because the end of the year I think I missed winning the championship by just a number of points. But at the time, yeah, it was frustrating. But at the end of the day, I was driving for a top team and getting a little bit of money for it. So after 97, then we went on to 98 and we were the number one driver with Tapio. So yeah, it was amazing.
And as well, Howard, it wasn't just this young crop of British drivers that was coming up through. We had the likes of Tapio and these guys. There was a lot of Finns coming over. Serge Georgian, Alan O'Reilly, or I kept calling him Alan O'Reilly over here. Alan coming over as well too. It was great to see the British guys pitted against these other World Championship hopefuls.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was nice to see Yamo Keitolato there in Donegal now the other week, and he was saying, I remember asking him how important was it, and to get a drive in the British Championship was really a big stepping stone for them, So, and it was quite difficult for them to come and especially to the tarmac because it was all alien to them, So they were good value for money really when they got to the tarmac because you knew they'd never finish, like. It was always quite exciting to wind them up, really. But they did, they did bring a lot to the party as well. I think as well because they were getting paid quite well. That was probably helped raise the game and raise the value of drivers. I think it was quite good, really, and definitely Renault coming in. That was a big point where the bar was actually raised as well. And it's quite interesting. Renault actually wrote a book about the British Championship and competing in the British Championship with the Clio and the Megane. I think it's called Maximum Attack, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And it's really
Max
interesting
Attack.
to read actually because it talks about how it was all developing and how it started and how many people there were in the decision making process to get them to commit to it. So it was massive for these manufacturers and ultimately they sold cars. That's all they wanted to do. Sold cars. And if you look how many Seats were on the road in the late 90s, early 2000s, it made a big impact.
Yeah, because even the time Seat road cars, they had a sticker on the back window, F2 World Champions.
Yeah, exactly.
Never see, you don't see that in the back
You
of
never
the
see that
Yaris now or
association
whatever.
now, do you? No.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, like Ryan, at that time, rallying was a tool to sell cars, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've touched on touring cars as well, and it's obviously reflected in that now. I mean, we don't somehow have the same car culture, car passion. Certainly on the when we come to Ireland, we still see a bit of that car passion, but unfortunately on the mainland, some of that has waned a little bit. But yeah, like you say, well, Howard was just talking about the Seats. What was it? The Kiwi. What was it?
Kiwi Green.
green or whatever it was called. Yeah, and you used to actually see them on the road in that colour. Obviously, the Seats went yellow eventually, but it was that colour that I remember seeing the Seat road cars around in, and you really did sort of see a direct effect on the road. And I guess we've seen it a little bit with Toyota over the last couple of years. It's been nice to see them do something that's been directly related to rallying again, because for a long time we've sort of missed that. And in those days, the F2 days, the fact that they were based on a front wheel drive road car meant that they could go out and sell them. And that's ultimately what rallying was always about, wasn't it? It was, as Howard's just said, manufacturers promoting their cars to go and sell them. Whereas now we've ended up largely with cars that aren't really very closely related to the actual base car. And like I said, Toyota aside, we don't very often see a road going version of the rally car.
Yeah, what was it? Was it a one on Sunday, sell on Monday? I think that was the old mantra, wasn't it?
I think the old Ford slogan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Alistair, you touched on it earlier too. Like this was also a stepping stone into the World Championship. Like Volkswagen give you a world program as well, and like for the pace and the level you were at in the BRC, going to the world events probably held no fear because you knew you're at the top of the game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think yes, it's always difficult going to a new country or a new event that you've not been to before, especially events like Finland or New Zealand where they're quite specialised. But you knew the speed in the British Championship was as competitive as it was elsewhere, so you did go with the idea that you could fight with the local drivers, and we did. We proved that. We fought with them in Finland and Portugal, all these places. So the British Championship was a really good proving ground for that.
Yeah, and Martin, probably the same question to yourself as well. Renault give you the platform to go onto the world stage that it's probably not available for somebody coming up through the BRC now.
No, I mean we were very lucky, and the dealers were involved. Like you were saying, it's all about selling cars, and the dealers would be VIPs on each of the rallies. And I remember after the Manx one year, and we were all out for dinner, and we had some of the dealer principals on our table, and we kept plying them with red wine and kept the beers flowing. And I remember Derek Ringer actually instigating a little conversation about maybe the opportunity to go to Australia, and there was 3 dealers there, and after a while we put this idea in their minds, and one of them said, okay, the next month of car sales, I'll put that budget towards the Australia project. And then at the end of the evening, the other 2 agreed. And so the next thing, we got a call within a matter of 2 or 3 days saying, we're going to Australia. And literally it was over a drink after the presentation, after the Manx win. And the next thing, off we went, we did Australia. And we were fighting with Hyundai out there for the F2 World Manufacturers Championship, but it was all coming from that one evening on the Isle of Man.
Yeah, Trevor, that is just so hard to take in. That everyone's so corporate now. That probably something like that would just never happen.
Yeah, it's the same story with Seat. So I don't know if you know the story of Seat getting involved in rallying, but it was basically, I was deputy clerk of course at Lurgan Park, and Burma had sponsored the rally for 27 years, something like that, and they decided to pull out. And James Bain, who's the secretary of the club, had gone along. He had a Volvo, and the local Volvo dealer also had Seats, and they went along to Nuts Corner. And the girls there, Barbara Armstrong and all the girls driving them about. And he said, well, would Seat be interested in sponsoring our rally? And the area manager said, well, I'll talk to the marketing manager, and all of that happened. And then eventually we got a meeting, and this guy pitches up. You're talking about the Kiwi green or Kiwi yellow Ibiza. This guy pitches up, gets out of it. And I recognized him a bit, and he sort of recognized me, weren't quite sure, walked into Lurgan Park, had a look round, and then later, about an hour later, it clicked where we'd met in Kilmarnock in a pub one night. We'd both been out for a while, and the association happened. We'd done the deal there. They sponsored Lurgan Park like they were sponsoring county shows in England. And that was in 96. And they decided, right, we need a car. And at that stage, Barbara, of course, was doing the corporate stuff for them. So we'll build a car for Barbara. Of course, Blackie and Barbara were together at that point. And so they built a car for Lurgan Park for her to do it. And then they went to RSC next year, the end of that year. Next minute, I bumps into him at the Autosport show in January. And he said, "You just cost me £1.5 million." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "We got a 2-car kit cane in the British Championship." So Harry Rovenpower and Barbara did the British Championship in '97. That was the start then of what happened with Howard and Gwyndaf the year after. Just by connections like that, you know.
And even for yourself and Neil as well, doing the world events, it probably didn't even make sense because Vauxhall were really, it was Opel that was the known brand outside the UK, but Vauxhall took a team out and competed in various events in the World Championship.
Yeah, well, the connection with Opel as well, and they wanted to push the car and try and market the car, and it wasn't competitive compared to 06 Maxis and the Megans. Like we went to San Remo and we just got blitzed there because the first stage of the car in '99 wasn't as good as the one we used in 2000, which was a proper tarmac lightweight car, which was great. But yeah, it was the same. But we were competing, remember, against and us negotiating the deal was against Vauxhall and. Sorry, against Volkswagen and Seat, who were doing world events, like Alister said, they did 8, 9 events. Seat were doing events, so that was the key for us is to do 4 World Championship rallies. That was the most important thing, and the money was probably the best between them all as well, so that helped. But yeah, and exactly for the reasons Alister was saying, it gave us the chance to go out and experience those events again. Our first World Championship rally was in '97 in the Seat, in the Honda, and. Yeah, so to go back to San Remo, do Finland, do Rally GB, and one other, it was great to be able to do that.
Yeah, and like Howard, whenever Gwyndaf got the opportunity to sign for Seat, you were set a challenge before you were signed up, and there was it a mountain bike involved?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was carrying a bit too much weight, and I don't know how it was instigated, really, whether it was Blackie and Gwyndaf or whatever. But I had a phone call off a guy called Jim Rumley, who was the sort of financial guy for SBG. And he was quite diplomatic and said, we want you to lose this weight, and we want you to get it down to a certain weight by a certain time. So I had nothing to lose, did I? If I didn't do it, so, it wasn't happening. If I did it, well, it was great. And it was a financial incentive. So I took it on board and went to see the doctor to see if it was physically possible. The doctor said, yeah, no problem. So then I went to see the Welsh kickboxing champion, who was a personal trainer. She did me a program to burn fat. And then I followed that for about a couple of months and shed a load of weight. And then ultimately, I had to sort of have a goal, really, to do something to get there. So I did a mini triathlon. But something quite interesting, I struggled to get down. I got down to about 13.5 stone, and I couldn't shake the last bit of weight. So I was in the gym one day, and I got talking to this guy, and I know the guy, and I mean, I knew who he was, and probably wasn't the best person in the world to give you health advice. But he said, "Have you tried thyroxine?" He said, "I take thyroxine." He said, and it makes me mad. He said, it really blasts my metabolism. So I thought, well, I got nothing to lose. Let's have a blast. So he gave me some, and I tried it, and sure enough, in about 2 days, it kicked in, and I was fucking buzzing. I was like buzzing for about 3 or 4 days, and the weight fell off. Great. Anyway, my missus works in the hospital, and I went in to see her one day, and there was a doctor there, and he said, "Oh, you've done really well on this weight loss." I said, "Yeah." One thing I said, "I've just taken some thyroxine this week to try and shed that last bit of weight." And he said, "That's dangerous. Don't do that." He said, "That could bloody kill you." Christ, stop that immediately. He said it could race your heart. So I stopped it. I didn't take any more. But it did push me over the edge. And every time I see that guy, I think of that little story as well, because it's all related to life, isn't it? And then I went down for the big weigh-in, and it was, what's her name, Lizzie Linford. She was in control of it all. Went down to SBG, another weigh-in, and yeah, you've done it. And then I wrote this check, and I had a check for $5,000 for losing the weight. And then I came home and had a fucking massive big party. Got picked. Because I probably hadn't drunk for 3 months. So when I used to drink, then I used to go mad, So it was a big incentive, and yeah, but I always think it changed my personality as well. Sucked all my personality out of me. So, But
but
putting it back on now and more, probably double it actually. But yeah, there we are. That's life, isn't it?
But yourself and Gwendolyn got great opportunities out of this. You've got to compete in the world car or the world championship in the F2 car, and eventually into the world car, into the Cordoba as well.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we did. We had a couple of opportunities in the Cordoba, which was actually quite a good car towards the end. Yeah, we didn't finish any rallies in it. It was a bit brittle, wasn't it? And I think we were like fourth on the REC one year. So, yeah, but it did give us opportunities. And there was another year, I think it was 1998, when we all ended up going to Finland. Do you remember, Alister? There was you, Mark Higgins. I'm not sure if the Renaults were there as well. Was there 2 Renaults there?
98.
It was actually like the BRC on tour.
Yeah. 98, definitely 98, because you were there to help the factory team, weren't you?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Yeah. We were there to beat all the BRC boys, that's what we were doing. we weren't listening to any team orders about the factory team. We were there to beat Alister, McRae and Mark Higgins.
Who won from you two in that rally, Howard?
I think you actually...
Oh, was it? I didn't realise that, yeah.
I think you were the only one to finish, I think. We all went off. We were actually excluded and withdrawn from the rally for illegal servicing, for taking water off somebody to put in our radiator because we'd hold a rad. I don't think Higgins finished. I think you had a good result. I think you might have won F2 actually.
I did. I won F2. Yeah, I had to hold up the honours of the British Championship because all you plonkers crashed.
Yeah, but it was wild, I remember going back to my room one night, right, and all them wankers and the entourage who used to come with us. I think Martin Rowe was one of them. My whole bedroom was out on the roof of the hotel. Everything. The bed, the bedside cabinet, all my clothes, my shoes, everything out of the window. Wavy was involved, I know, and Barbara Armstrong.
What about Gwendolyn's?
There's nothing in the room at all. And I looked through the window, everything's sitting on the roof. Remember that Rantasippi Hotel in a flat roof, didn't it? Where's me fucking...
And what happened to Gwendolyn's overalls?
Huh?
What happened to Gwendolyn's overalls?
Oh, he was not happy about that, was he? Didn't you tie them all up? Didn't you tie all his clothes together and make a big line? Oh, he flipped, didn't he? Yeah, but he had a sense of humour failure quite often, in fairness,
Ryan, absolutely magical times.
Yeah. When you look back now, just talking with Alister about Max and his career and whatever, and there was opportunities, like you said, right away from one-mate championships through the Formula 2 into World Championship and then four-wheel drive cars, and we're all getting older and we all have the rose-tinted specs, but an amazing era of rallying, and unfortunately probably never to be repeated again, and some amazing stories, amazing memories, amazing cars. And great times to look back on.
Yeah, and yes, obviously fitness was very important, but we see now, it's all about fitness, it's all about healthy living and all this here. Yes, there was a certain amount of that back then, but there was a lot of fun involved as well.
Well, the whole thing, the whole thing's changed. I'm sure, Alister, you see it through Max, but the amount of time they've got to spend watching the recce videos, watching onboards, perfecting pace notes, and Martin might have been drinking lemonade that evening on the Isle of Man, but I remember we had a few nights out during the recce on the Isle of Man, because that's what you did then. You certainly didn't go back and watch any onboards. So the sport has become very professional, but that requires a lot of money to do anything nowadays. And as we said, just the opportunities aren't there like they were in that period.
Yeah, because Alister, I suppose we'll start touching on now the weekend in Donegal recently. We can see the respect, the way you guys just slot it all back in together again. Like, there was so much respect, so much camaraderie, so much fun.
Oh no, definitely. And I think I know you talked about, I was cutting it out, but you talked about the way rallying's changed, the professionalism. I think it was professional back then, but I think now technology has advanced so much, whether it be in what you eat, how you train, the videos, all that stuff. So it's probably, I don't think it's more professional now. It's just the tools you've got now allow you to do so much more for preparation. But back then, for sure, it was a travelling circus at time, and there was quite a few clowns in it. But it was good fun. And you worked very hard when you were in the car and before the rally, but you also you partied hard after it. So to meet up with everybody again in Donegal, it was great to see it. And I don't think we're all a lot older and we look a bit older, but we're all just as daft.
Trevor, the clowns were back on tour again.
Yeah, it was great. It was absolutely amazing. It's a shame Martin couldn't make it for sad circumstances. But yeah, to go there and literally in the bar on the first night, and we got there like 5:30, 6 o'clock. No, he's here. Like Kai Lindstrom's there, Phil Mills there, Ollie's there, travel from Australia. It's just, and it'll never ever happen again. That's the thing about it. It's just one of those events that was a one-off. I remember it was probably 4 or 5 years ago when Donagh called me to ask about the Asturias ban, whether it was genuine or not. And he said, it'd be lovely to get all of you guys together. And I said, yeah, good luck with that. Because it just doesn't happen, those things. But Donagh Kelly made it happen. And boy, did he make it happen. It was just an incredible evening. 2 evenings, and just the whole weekend was this exception.
Yeah, like Howard, on the Friday evening before the whole madness kicked off, you asked Donagh the simple question, why? And his simple answer to that was...
Because I can. Yeah, that's what he said. Because I can. Yeah, it's fantastic. Like, there was no common sense in it at all, was there, really? Yeah. But, what he did was, like, he made memories, and he made it was bloody fantastic. And I'm really sorry, Martin, you weren't there, but you were the loser.
Yeah, it was a tough decision for me.
It was fantastic. Like, it was great fun, and it was just, and to see the cars again, there was something quite special about sitting in the cars again,
I'd have loved to have gone, and obviously for many, many reasons.
I tell you what, looking at that Renault, I don't know if I'd have got in it really, because it didn't look that well built, like. The welding wasn't up to much on the cage.
It's the lightweight version.
I think it was, yeah, definitely.
Just to see the pictures of the museum itself looked amazing, and that's without obviously all you legends being there. But I had a very close friend pass away, and his celebration of life was the Sunday, so it was a tough call, but we had to be here, and we were involved with this whole thing. But yeah, just to see the cars, and then I spoke to Donagh and Rory the day before, and he was sat in the pub, and just the setup at the back of the house looked amazing. So yeah, I don't miss the idea of some of the hangovers I hear you boys had, or I think it was just one long drink you had from Friday through to Monday. But no, it would have been good to see everyone for sure.
Do you remember Donagh did originally say that it would be good to get the Megane out for the International to run a few stages as a zero car? That'd be awesome, wouldn't it, if we were able to make that happen?
Definitely. He sent me a video recently of his son driving the car at an airfield, but it wasn't just the Megane, but just the noise of those cars, 2-litre engines on like injection with the way that induction sound, you can't mistake that. And all the cars sounded amazing. So yeah, that was nearly brought a tear to my eye watching the thing.
Yeah, because Ryan, we didn't even touch on that. These cars, the noises they made, it was just out and out, just an assault on the senses.
I think that was part of the appeal of Formula 2. Yeah, the normally aspirated engines, we've become so used to turbocharged stuff over the last few years that, they might have only been front wheel drive, but they did sound fantastic. I always remember the Ulster Rally and Parc Fermé on the top floor of the Europa Hotel, and hearing all the F2 cars with straight pipes going up the multi-story car park. That was a bit of a highlight in itself, but amazing, just amazing to look at. I think two things as well. It was the sound, but also how the cars looked, particularly as they went wide track and as they got the wider body kits, and they just looked fantastic. They sounded fantastic. The liveries and the amount of cars there, it just all fitted together.
Yeah, because I remember in the early 90s, Llewellyn and the Manx, and I think the Astra at that stage was putting out something like 210 brake horsepower. And it must have been whoever, Steve Ryder or whatever, and 210 brake horsepower through the front wheels. This is the zenith of front wheel drive. This will never be bettered. And within a few short years, there were close to 300 brake horsepower at the end.
Yeah, what would the Megane got to, Martin, towards the end?
I think it was like 285, 275 maybe for gravel, 285 for tarmac. But yeah, I think.
He's been very diplomatic. But Ryan, you were there for the weekend in Donegal. Like, I don't even know where to begin because every time I looked around on the Friday evening, there was somebody else. There was another recognisable face. There was oh my God, there's your man. It was like it was mind blowing for me standing there. For yourself, was it how good was it to meet up with all those, friends that maybe you hadn't seen in years?
Yeah, we just have to say a huge thank you to Donna for putting the event on, and as you said, we've all bumped into each other somewhere along the line, but to actually all be together in one place, and yeah, unfortunately, Martin, shame you couldn't be there, but not to rub it in, we're not trying to rub it in, honestly, but it was just very special. And there was a lot of lovely conversations over the weekend. We just happened to catch up with somebody one on one, and just have the 1 pint of Guinness that lasted all weekend, as you said. It's as Trevor said, it will be difficult to ever see something like that happening again.
Yeah, because Alister, that glass, it just never seemed to empty.
No, and I reckon at one point I was tried to drink the Guinness, but I reckon I'd actually backed up and there was no more room, so I changed onto something shorter. But now there was. I don't think I've not felt that rough for quite a long time. So, which is maybe a good thing. And I'm not drinking as much as I used to.
But this was no benefit to Donagh Kelly to do this. This was just pure joy. This was I don't know how you would even what way or use words for this here. This was just a great weekend of celebration.
No, I think I think he's obviously got that car collection and the Formula 2 cars there. And as he said, he's got the ability to do what he did, but to go out of his way and get that organised and get as many people there. It was definitely a special weekend, and it's been said already. It's not going to happen again because probably I'm not sure we'll all last another 10 years. But it was just an amazing event, and a big thanks to Forum coming up with the idea and then actually going through with it, because a lot of these times. You have great ideas and everybody talks about it, but it doesn't actually happen. But it did this time.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't even just drivers. There was co-drivers, there was mechanics, there was media, there was team personnel. This was right across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how many people were there. I think it was 125 people. To get all of these people in the one place at the one time, and get them all out again was probably more impressive. But just a great weekend.
Yeah, I was hired. Even you didn't even have to think about anything. You were bussed up and down. Everything was just laid on for you.
Yeah, it was fantastic. The organisation and the hospitality was brilliant. The red chair was good as well, and my climax of the weekend was definitely flipping Mark Higgins in the red chair. that was actually nice because he wanted to tell that story about James Bond. I don't even know who fucking James Bond is. And
I wasn't there, so you have to tell the story.
He didn't even get to start. I said, "Where are you celebrating the BRC F2? And you want to talk about James Bond, some fictional character? Fuck off!" And he was distraught, wasn't he? I want to tell the story. Oh, it's so funny. That was brilliant. That was epic. I've never experienced or done that before. That was great fun, I thought.
Yeah, Trevor, whenever Howard got a hold of that red button, he was quite dangerous.
Yeah, lethal with it. But it's fair enough, because there's a lot of dodgy stories about the lot that shouldn't have been told. Had it been about 2 hours earlier, I think some of those stories might have been not told, which I don't know if they were recorded or not. Hopefully they don't come out.
Yeah, was some of it recorded,
Yeah, Dirtfish hopefully have it recorded, but it probably can't be released.
They'll be bribing you guys with it.
Yeah.
We were telling stories about you though, Martin, so...
Connor, you wanted to do a confession session then towards the end as well. Do you want to run?
Yeah, well, we saw on the weekend Howard had plenty of stories about people and invited people to come up and talk, and we talked about the red chair. Like, if there is anybody who wants to confess to doing anything that they shouldn't have been doing on the stages or on the events, now's a good time to come forward.
Complete
Ryan's
silence.
looking very guilty looking there in the middle. We'll ask Ryan first of all.
Good luck with that. we need the Guinness first before any of that comes out.
I think one story that I can tell was our first test of Vauxhall, which was in one of the forests probably that we were using at the weekend in the Cambrian. It was in North Wales anyway. I think it was in the afternoon. Yarmo would be driving in the morning, the afternoon. We ended up tipping it upside down into a lake on our first test of Vauxhall, so that wasn't a good start, really.
You just didn't get a go at all in that day?
No, we got it back out again, but it was a bit wet in the back. Not a good way to introduce yourself to a team, like.
No. Martin, anything you would care to share with the group?
Oh, I think I don't know. Lots of stories, lots of good memories, lots of cringing memories. But yeah, I'll keep quiet at this point.
Alister?
I'm going down the same route as Martin Rowe. I think we just need to leave some of the stories where they were.
There's one testing car related story. It was quite funny, but the first time I was in a car with Derek Ringer, and he'd come along to the team, and obviously he'd done quite well with some guy called Colin McRae, won some championship or something. So first test, I was a little bit worried. Got in the McGann, and it was the test car, and there was two things, and Derek says to me, super serious, he was like, I don't do punctures and I don't do pushing. And I'm like, okay. So we go down this little road, and it's got grass in the middle and grass at the edges, and we're just getting to the stage that we're going to test on. And I just thought, well, I'll try the brakes, see where the balance is, the bias valve. And so I just like second gear, third gear, and then I hit the brakes and the engine stalled. I locked up. I had no steering, and we slid off the road. We did about 30 miles an hour on a straight road. He just looked at me like, remember, I don't do punctures and I don't do pushing. Yeah, and we hadn't even got to the stage yet, and all the brakes were completely to the front. So anyway, we got pulled out, and the day went on. And then we'd been testing all day long, and I remember this loop, and it was like a jump and then 100 meters into a hairpin. And so I was coming down in sixth, I think, and then I was changing to fifth, maybe fourth, go over the jump, land, brake hard, go around the hairpin. And because Derek was who he was, and he'd obviously sat in with Colin, it was in my mind. I'm like, oh, Derek, what, any tips, any driver feedback, and what would Colin do down there? And he said, well, he wouldn't lift until the jump. So I go back around, and we're flat in sixth coming down here towards this jump, and he's there saying Colin would be flat over the jump. I'm thinking, well, this is brave. Anyway, we took it flat over the jump, landed, and crashed. That's the last time I listened to Derek for any drive advice.
Martin Rowe, it's not connected, but I remember me having a very similar incident in Sweden after listening to you, and you said it was flat, and I took it flat and spun off into a snowbank.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
No, good times.
So, Ryan, anything you want to share with the group?
Nothing really springs to mind from that period. But that, like I said, I mentioned it earlier. That story for me was funny on the Manx. Just getting the two punctures and coming out on the road section. The chase car had got lost because it thought we'd stopped in the stage, and we hadn't. We were still going, but on two flats. Had one spare tyre which we put on, and then going up the road with Terry Harriman, working out how we're going to do Faulty Will on a flat rear tyre that was gone by this time, and just pulled up by a chase car, got a standard wheel out, fitted it on, and did the stage. And as I said, they were things that you could do then. That obviously those days have very much gone now. Who said they got excluded for taking water? That about sums it up now. You just Howard said you just can't do that sort of thing now.
For sure. And Howard.
Oh, we could be here all night for stories and stories, to be honest. Yeah. No, I'd just like to finish by saying, thank you very much to everybody that made the effort to come, and thank you very much to Donagh for organising it. And I think Rory Kennedy was quite instrumental as well. It was really nice to see him here today. It was a fantastic weekend, and the hospitality you showed us was absolutely fantastic. I really can't thank you enough. Good.
And Alister McRae will leave the last word to yourself.
I would just say exactly what Howard said. That's it's only a long time ago that we were all driving together in the British Championship, and to get the opportunity to be back there and tell stories, whether they were true or not, it didn't really matter at the night, and it was great to be there. And maybe we'll get another one in another 10 or 15 years, but at least we've been to one of them.
What I would like to say, Alister, is you don't look any older 25, 30 years on. What's the secret?
That is just because you need to get glasses, Howard.
I've got glasses here, look.
Oh, looks like Jerry in a row.
And even my missus said that. She said, "Oh, doesn't that Alister McRae look fantastic at this age?"
But you've got to remember, I'm 10 years younger than you, Howard.
How old are you then?
I'm 54 this year.
Christ, 54. See, you look bloody well. Fair play to you.
Yeah, I look after myself.
Yeah, well, obviously, and that's Australia living like a bum on the beach, probably.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you live like an arse. I live like a bum, so we're not far away.
Thanks to all those guys there for taking the time. We know how incredibly busy they are, and to take the time and to be so given with their time, really appreciate it all. And two others that I spoke to on the phone that hoped to get on but just never could get the times to sit was Gwyndaff Evans and Phil Mills, who really wanted to pay tribute to the weekend that Donagh put on as well too. Absolutely couldn't speak highly enough of it. And that was so many of the crews and people that we spoke to the weekend over in Frosses. Just the generosity of spirit that they received and the Donegal welcome, so yeah, thanks again, Donagh. What can we say? You pulled out of the bag once again. So Connor, that's us back for 2025. Unbelievable. So that was episode 1, series 4. And until next time, take care, speak soon, and bye.
That's the proudest day and the proudest time in the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett. That's all we said. I can still picture that run. That was just the best run ever.